Welcome to the Love Deep Lab podcast, helping you integrate sex, sexiness, sacredness, and science in your life and your bedroom. And now, your host, Dr. Stormy.
Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Stormy. Thanks for joining us today and tuning in. And today's episode, we are going to just jam out on neurodivergence and sexuality, two of my very favorite topics, and how couples can navigate differences in the bedroom and actually learn to support one another in this really tender, beautiful space. So we have two guests with us today, which is so exciting. We have Candice Christiansen and Chris Kishiyama. And I'm so excited to introduce them and share time with them. So I'm going to just read you their amazing bios. Autism and intimacy expert Candice Christiansen and board certified holistic health practitioner Chris Kishiyama have a beautiful relationship. During their 10 years together, they have had a lot of wild adventures, including Candice being diagnosed as autistic nearly 4 years ago. Candice's diagnosis was a game changer in their relationship, particularly as it relates to how they communicate and their sexual intimacy. Candice and Chris are also the owners of Namaste Center for Healing, which is an internationally known holistic treatment center that provides individual and couples therapy, autism and intimacy life skills classes, homeopathic treatments such as neurofeedback, needle-free acupuncture, ear seeds, and heart math resonance, and psychoeducational support groups for non-autistic as well as autistic individuals and couples with various intimacy issues. In 2020, Candice and Chris began a podcast called Spectrum of Love to bring hope to autistic couples wanting to achieve lasting and fulfilling relationships. They have also created an autism and intimacy webinar series that addresses topics such as understanding autism and navigating through various communication issues. In their spare time, Candice and Chris love to paddleboard, kayak, and ski in Utah, as well as lay on the beach and swim with the turtles in Maui. Welcome, you guys.
Hi.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, it's so fun to share time. I'm just super excited about this podcast, about this episode today. And like I mentioned, these are two neurodivergence and sexuality they are my two favorite topics. So, and I'm so excited to just share with our listeners. And I mean, I just get right in. Like, I'd love to hear from you all. I mean, I don't think probably all of our listeners even know what we're talking about when we say neurodivergent. So maybe we can just start there.
Well, it's interesting because neurodivergence includes autism as well as ADHD. And so, but today we'll be talking about autism. And so many folks will, if you're autistic, you understand the term neurodivergent, but a lot of people that aren't in this world don't understand that term, but it really is, I would say, just kind of the appropriate term now, an umbrella term, if you will, that I really like to use when we're talking about autistic and or ADHD folks. And my guess is that there are other diagnoses that fit under that category. Autism spectrum definitely nowadays encompasses a lot more diagnoses that just go under that term. So I'm not saying all of those, but that's really what we're talking about.
Awesome. And I love it. I know I've shared with you, but to me, it sounds like a superpower. Like neurodivergence is like, it's so cool. And I'm like, it sounds, my brain, my neurotypical brain, I'm like, that is super badass. I love the term neurodivergence. It's just really beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I think I just appreciate you saying that because I've gone through a process after getting diagnosed where it is a little bit of a grieving process. What does this mean? Does this mean that there's something, quote, wrong with me? Does this mean that I'm not, quote, normal? And now, I mean, doing this, just working with other autistic folks and being so passionate about autism and being an autistic woman, I've really embraced it, like you said, as really a superpower. It is just wildly beautiful. I think autism is wildly beautiful. And so Chris and I are dedicated and passionate about bringing that message into the space.
Amazing. And I mean, just also, if you can just touch on autism and neurodivergence, right? Because we're talking about autism and ADHD, it's really common. So like it's very likely that if you're out there dating, that you could date a neurodivergent person or you could fall in love with a neurodivergent person, right? So that it's fairly common as far as incidents out in the population.
It really is. I mean, excuse me, I don't have a number, but when I look at just how many people we serve that come in with intimacy issues, both oftentimes has been diagnosed with ADHD. And sometimes when I meet with them, I go, wow, I think they missed the autism diagnosis too. Or one will come in with ADHD, one not, but then it's like, or autism, one not, but they've got other stuff going on. And so you're right, there is. It's just, there's a lot.
Yeah, one thing I also find interesting is it's not just the people we serve that are, having struggles or difficulty, but it's in all the circles of friends that we have. I mean, you can really, just as you're talking with friends, I'll be out with some of my buddies having a cup of coffee, and as they're talking about their lives and their relationships, there is this little thread that comes up, and it's like, oh, it sounds kind of like an autistic trait. I may not vocalize it to them, but it's at just the level of awareness that I have because of our experience, that I'm seeing it more and more in just almost everyone I meet, because it is a spectrum. And so it's just very interesting, the prevalence of it. And like Candice and I, we had no idea when we first got together. I thought there's some quirky things that, I have some quirky things, but that's what I think everyone chalks it up to, until we took a deeper dive and Candice, really started to explore that. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, and when we first got together, I remember we're going on a trip, and I said to him, I think I need to join an autism support group. And he laughed and said, you're not autistic. So even back then, and we've been together 10 years. I mean, this was right when we first started dating. But I've wondered, and but again, neither of us at that time, I had a feeling, I suspected, I was reading up, I was looking into, but Chris, your view of autism was very different than what it is now. And I would find books around the house on like borderline personality disorder. And so I'd be like, who are you reading this for? Because I'm not borderline, babe. Like, I'm not borderline. Right. I'm just reading up, because he didn't want to say it. But our communication and our intimacy got so bad, if you will, that without the diagnosis, I don't know that we'd be married, or we'd still be together.
Wow. So speak to that. So you were dating, and then you were diagnosed with autism after your dating 4 years ago, right? Is that about right?
Yeah. So we've been together 10 years. Last couple months ago, it was our 10 year, and throughout the years, I mean, granted, stress can cause, I get communication issues, but I was having significant meltdowns, which at the time I didn't know that's what it was. It was, I was blowing up. And Chris has, PTSD. And so it was just, what is going on? And we just couldn't figure it out. We couldn't figure out our communication. It was such an incredible struggle. And finally it was like, okay, I have been in therapy, by the way, off and on since I was 16. And I finally met with an astute clinician who wasn't a neuropsychologist, wasn't like a neuropsychiatrist, wasn't anyone that I think we think of going to get diagnosed, but she was a really astute clinician. And the one question she asked that really changed it for me was, have you ever wondered if you're autistic? Wow. And I said, yes, I have been wondering for so long. And so, just her observation, hearing me going through the diagnostic manual, it was like, oh my gosh, this is what it is. And so we finally, I finally, I brought it to Chris and said, okay, I really want you to read this, look at this, let's talk about this. This is really what is going on. And I want us to do some work around it in our own therapy and together, so that we can stay married, but also so that we can help other people. Because, and you can speak to this, Chris was getting online on Facebook groups for partners of autistic people. And what were you reading?
Well, I about fell out of my chair, just even a Google search, when the first 500 million hits are around, run. to like run through your life.
Oh, yikes.
Like, it's not worth it. Don't stay in. You'll never fix it. You'll never be right. Like,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it was breathtaking. And so I shared that with her. I'm like, this scares me. I mean, there is nothing out there for partners. And I didn't.
Nothing.
Wow.
Nothing.
Wow.
Nothing constructive. And and I didn't want to. This being day one, right? Like first steps into this new paradigm. I didn't want to be tainted, if you will, with all the negativity or this preconceived concepts around what this type of relationship looks like. And so I was like, no, I'm not going to join any groups. I'm not going to, I didn't even want to blog about it for fear of reprisal or just people and all kinds of stuff. And so, so I really started off a deeper process with Candice and I, really kind of getting clear on where we are on the spectrum as far as what contributes to struggle, what contributes to shutdown, what leads to all this type of distress. And so so it wasn't an easy road, and there are times when it's not easy still, but
we use a lot of humor, and
I love it.
We're both Gottman leaders. We had become Gottman leaders before the diagnosis. And Gottman therapy, Gottman Method is really great for autistic people because it's so concrete.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we said, because remember I found this book and it was terrible. I mean, it was so terrible for partners. It was just pathologizing for autistic people and terrible for partners. So I said, okay, we need to create something. We need to create a program, a curriculum, support. We need to change the dialogue here, because first and foremost, this is not our reality. We've had struggles. Right. We're still together. We want to be together. And we know we have practiced some things that work, like the Gottman Method. And we want to help other people that have struggled like us to stay married and stay together.
Totally.
And intimacy piece.
Absolutely. Beautiful. I mean, what's so wild, well, two things. So when I first met you all, I was aware, you can feel the energy of your partnership. And I mean that as such a compliment. You can really, and again, that's not to say it's easy or it's rosy and we put a foot forward, but you could feel the connection, the communication, the respect, right? What I want to say is for our listeners, whether you are neurodivergent and listening or not, or just have a beating heart and are listening, communication in relationship is so critical. And so it sounds like for you, your diagnosis of autism and sort of maybe forced the hand of we need to learn how to communicate, manage blow-ups, all those things. And what a gift. I mean, because every couple on the planet struggles with communication. It's really beautiful. And so you mentioned communication, that you had to, and I'm gonna just give you a little teaser. I'm going to ask you towards the end of our show to give our listeners 3 communication tips, or 3 tips that they can practice. I call it sexy homework. They get homework each week to practice. So you can be thinking as we go through. But you mentioned communication, then you also mentioned intimacy, so sex and sexuality. So I'd love to have you talk about that and how that's been in your partnership, how neurodivergence has impacted that, and how you guys have navigated it.
Well, let's talk about, first I'll say, if we talk about sex and sexuality, it is very wide open and diverse for the autistic community. A lot of times, unfortunately, society makes this gross assumption that all autistic people are asexual, and that is not true. There are some people who are autistic that are asexual, and that's great, And there's a lot of us out there who enjoy and love sex. And so that, for me, what's really interesting is I've gone through this phase in my life. I went through a phase in my life where I was completely sexually anorexic. So I had a lot of anxiety around sex and intimacy. Again, now looking back, I think I can attribute a lot of it to being autistic and not enjoying certain touch, also having a history of trauma, and being with men that were takers and not like Chris, who is very sensitive to wanting me to enjoy pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And men who would not communicate during sex or before sex or after sex. And so I just didn't like sex. Sex, you know, in the past was very anxiety provoking for me. As an autistic woman, when we talk about sex, I don't like soft touch. Soft touch is, I mean, I will have a meltdown if I have to know, I have to be prepared for the touch. If he's going to tickle. Yeah. If I'm already stressed out and he tries to tickle me, I'll just be like, don't touch. So with sex, what we've learned and we've communicated around this, which is really beautiful, is I actually like a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. That really works for me. I don't like pain. I don't want to be hurt. I don't swing to that level. And I don't judge people that do. It just doesn't float my boat. But we know that I do like pressure, mm-hmm. You know, whether it's touch, pressure. If you're going to touch me, like, because that helps me feel in my body. It helps me feel grounded and calm. And I can relax and release. And I really enjoy orgasm that way.
Yeah.
And so I think the biggies for us has been just knowing that. I also have learned ways like smell. I'm very sensitive to smell, but I don't want to offend. So if, you know, for instance, if we are starting to kiss and Chris has coffee breath, mm-hmm. You know, it would be a turnoff to be like, ew, your breath stinks. So I'll say stuff like, maybe we should go scope, you know, or maybe we should go use the mouthwash before we start, and we'll just kind of
making out.
Right? Just trying to be, but knowing that I have those sensory sensitivities that we have to be aware of, just so that I'm not kind of taken away by that I can be present with Chris. I don't know if you want to add to that, but that's really some the things that I've noticed with autism and our intimacy.
Well, yeah, it's interesting just in retrospective, looking at the course of our intimacy, and like when you're first together, there's this exploratory phase, right, where you're getting to know one another, and it seemed like once Candice was diagnosed and we had a greater understanding, it was easier to communicate around our intimacy because there was a degree of black and whiteness to it, of like, yeah, I like this, I don't like that, you know, it was just much clearer. And for at least being a male in the partnership, it made more sense to me to go, oh, this is the framework, right? Mm-hmm. Not that I was like trying to be logical with intimacy, but it just made it so that I could relax into that intimacy without fearing like I was hurting her or fearing that I was doing something was making her uncomfortable, because there are many sensations just with an autistic person that can cause, you know, disruption, can make you feel uncomfortable, can distract them. Mm-hmm. And I wanted her to be fully present with me when we were meeting.
And eye contact, I want to add to that, because one of the things, you know, we talk a lot about with our clients in general and our autistic clients is, you know, oftentimes, well, we know from the research that looking intently into someone's eyes actually moves us into our sympathetic nervous system. For an autistic person, for me, that's fight or flight.
Right. Yeah.
Painful for me. You can see I'm looking all around rather than just staring at you, because it makes me very anxious. So with sex, one thing that I really love with Chris is that he understands that I'm not going to be staring intently into his eyes as that doesn't do it for me.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Doesn't do it for me. I just, and so.
Oh, yes.
And
I love it.
He's just okay with it. It's like he doesn't he doesn't, you know, it's like, okay. But I also want the audience that's listening to know that I make sure that I hear what you like too, that it isn't all of our sex life doesn't just revolve around me either, that we have done a really good job so that I can say, you know, let me also pleasure you, and then show up for your Chris and have you feel safe to say like, I like it like this, or do it like that, or, you know.
Yeah. Amazing. And again, it's like, it's so interesting. I'm surprised by my insights I'm having on this, which is that you guys are a neurodivergent couple, right? And so we have an autistic person and a non-autistic person. And so that might be the case for people listening, but also it's a beautiful, and again, this is why to me neurodivergence is a superpower, because it's information for a neurotypical couple too. Like, learn to communicate, like focus on communication, and also learning to express your needs, wants, and desires sexually in a really clear way. And you also mentioned that you add in laughter, like humor, like add in laughter too, right? Those are beautiful concepts for everyone in partnership.
Yeah.
And in my clients, those are probably the two areas we work on the most: communication and expressing needs, wants, and desires, which is a part of communication, right? Yeah. So, I mean, to me, I feel so inspired by that, by hearing from you, because hearing from you both about how can we be more clear and concise, in our needs, wants, and desires. You talked about the eye contact, like, yes, absolutely. The research is really clear with neurodivergence, with autism, but also, I mean, just in my life, like, I have had partners who really want to do the look into the eyes and others who don't, and they're not autistic, right? And so learning to be able to communicate about that and normalize that and bring some light and some levity and some laughter and some consciousness to that. I think we get so blocked about expressing our needs, wants, and desires. And then I also love, Candice, you mentioned like being aware of Chris's needs, wants, and desires. We're in reciprocity. We're in sovereignty and reciprocity at the same time. And how magical is that? And I don't, but I don't think our listeners know. I have a 17-year-old amazing son with autism. And I was thinking, as you were talking about light touch, like, that's not his jam either. And I was talking with him that I desire for him to be able to share that with a partner. Like, that is not, so I'll like be tickling his back or whatever, and you can literally see him like bracing, and because that's how I like to be touched, and so I'll be like tickling his back, and you can literally see him bracing, and then I always remember, I'm like, oh, you don't like that? He's like, nope, don't like that. But giving him a voice and wanting him to have a voice, wanting anyone listening to feel sound and grounded in having a voice around needs, wants, and desires in and out of the bedroom. I just think it's really amazing.
Yeah.
I do want to say that because we will be directing our clients to listen to this podcast, and clients that come to us, couples that come to us where there's perhaps an autistic individual in the coupleship and then a non-autistic person, are coming to us in, oftentimes there's been a betrayal, or they're not communicating in general. They're very frustrated because of just the challenges of what autism has brought to their relationship. And so they might, for those that are listening or going to listen, I just want to reassure you that Chris and I have done a lot of work around our relationship in this regard, and there's hope. So please don't feel like, if or because what we're sharing doesn't feel like it resonates or relates to you right now, it doesn't mean that you can't get there with our support or with autism or neurodivergent sensitive therapist. I promise folks that if both in the coupleship are willing to do the work around this, to understand autism and the needs of each person, and even the needs of the non-autistic person, because all of us have a diagnosis of something, it can get better. So I just really wanted to impart that, because Chris and I are a unique couple in this regard. We do not oftentimes meet a lot of neurodivergent couples who come in and are like, yes, it's amazing, and our intimacy, and we talk, and oh no, like, we have done a ton of work, and that's what we're teaching couples to do.
Amazing. Well, and I so appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. And I also love that the struggle you all went through, right? And that's the thing we shine the most about, so that we can then help others in that area. And then hearing, Chris, that there was like crap and negativity out there for the non-autistic person. It's so beautiful and powerful what you guys are doing and creating, in your podcast and in your healing center to support that. I mean, and I can say it as a mom of an amazing young man with autism. Like, I don't know, maybe he's going to have a neurodivergent partner. Maybe he'll have a neurotypical partner. I don't know, but I love knowing that there's resources like that out there and hearing that message of hope. Because to me, any woman who gets to be with my son, I mean, I'm biased, he's my son, but is really, really, really fucking lucky because he's such an incredible human being and his brain is so beautiful, you know? And so I think it's amazing what you guys are doing out there. And so I will ask you, we'll do this let's call it like neurodivergent sexy homework for the week for our listeners and our viewers, but just 3, simple ways, and you can even describe them or lead one, but 3 simple things, practices that neurodivergent couples or any couples listening can do to improve communication and improve speaking about needs, wants, and desires in the bedroom.
Like the first one that comes to mind for me is feedback, and so it's so easy for us to just engage with one another, but without direct feedback, I don't know that I'm on the right path, and that's just for any couple. Right? If you're just for your homework this week, anytime that you're being intimate, whether it's through the spoken word or through the physical touch, give your partner feedback if you like that, if you don't like that, or if you really like that. I think that brings you closer together.
Beautiful. And when you were talking about, because I love that, I think I'm like, I always tell my clients, I don't want you guessing. Like when we're going to make assumptions, we're going to be wrong, right? So when you say feedback, are you talking about verbal feedback?
Yeah, both if possible, right? Verbal feedback, responding with your body, it sounds anything, but like some type of positive feedback, body language, verbally spoken, that you're on the right path, or your partner appreciates that, likes that, wants more of that, or don't ever do that again. Right?
Yeah, and I'll just add to that for those that are in a neurodivergent relationship right now. If you're non-autistic with an autistic person, you might have to physically take their hand and say, "This is what I like."
Mm-hmm.
Just being very concrete, direct, literal. Here, this is what I like. So showing is really important, because for those of us that get really anxious and struggle with communication, we're talking about a social communication. I call it a condition. I don't like the word disorder, but that's a huge challenge and a frustration for a lot of couples we work with, where the non-autistic person says he or she oftentimes doesn't communicate. Whereas for me, I tend to communicate a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted to speak to that showing in the next week, you might have to show each other, this is what I like. And I'll add another thing. Let's say there's a struggle sexually going on in your relationship. Intimacy doesn't have to always be sexual. So we can experience pleasure non-sexually through, like, I'm thinking of a chocolate strawberry right now. If I were to feed it to Chris.
Oh my God, like how sexy is that? That's so damn sexy.
And hot is that, right? Like, I'm like, holy cow, we're doing that tonight. Like, how hot is that for me to feed Chris? I mean, he is just beautiful, but a chocolate strawberry, and there doesn't need to be words. It's just, I want you to taste this, like just taste it, let it roll around on your tongue, let yourself really feel that, and then describe it. Or can I add another one? Here's another one. Putting lotion on each other. Even if you're just doing it slowly and sensually on each other's hands, or you decide let's do a back massage with lotion, non-sexual, but just that is so connecting.
Absolutely. I mean, and we know, right, in parasympathetic is when we have like the deepest connection with our partner, right? Emotional intimacy, right? Deepest intimacy. And so anything that can like you mentioned, for you, eye contact will put you into sympathetic. And so it's like, well, we want to promote parasympathetic for that deep, sustained connection. And so I love that. So feedback is a sexy homework 1. Sexy homework 2 is broaden your definition of intimacy. Like, people think intimacy, they think intercourse, penis and vagina intercourse, or penis intercourse. Like, they think intercourse. It's like, let's broaden. There's so much sensuality and pleasure and intimacy beyond just penetrative sex. And so I love that as the second tip and second sexy homework. So do you have a third one for our listeners?
Let me just add really quick for the autistic people listening. I'm just giving an example of strawberries and lotion if the texture or the taste grosses you out. Find a food that you like and something tactile if you like that works for you.
Amazing.
So I just was giving examples. That's not an end all be all.
Totally.
I would say that like one great sexy tip is literally scheduling a time to have a sex discussion about the things you like, you know, and even describing what you like about that, right? I mean, that kicks off so many things mentally for people that really begins that process. And again, it helps me understand my partner more, and it helps me be able to express to my partner what I may particularly enjoy for a particular reason, right? So it's like,
beautiful.
Candice likes more pressure, but it's a fine line. It's not too much, you know. And so just even have that conversation of, well, when we do this, I really like this, you know. I'd like
to
do that in 10 minutes, you know. So like,
we're gonna hang up. We're gonna
wrap this episode up.
I love it.
But I love that, bringing like light and levity. I mean, I always joke that I was like, if we're going to have sex with people, we should be able to be laughing with them, because there is, right? So, but normalizing that, bringing it to the conversation. I really like when we do this, and when we do this, I kind of, like you mentioned, Candice, earlier, like it takes me out of my body. It's not for me. It's not my jam. Like, and then you start to like, which is a super sexy conversation to have with your partner, right?
Yeah, it really is.
Well, and for folks who are listening that do better with something concrete, Emily Nagoski's book, Come As You Are.
Love it. Love it.
She has the not so sexy and the sexy handout. She has PDFs on her website. So it's like, you know, for Chris and I, sometimes we'll go that route where I'll I'll crack open her book. It's like, let's explore this together. If I'm just in a place where it's like, I'm locked up in terms of what to say, and I'm going to give a fourth. Can I give a fourth?
Oh, yes. Extra homework. Yes.
there are these cards. Again, if we're talking about neurodivergent couples, because we're talking about neurodivergent couples, they're the yes and cards, or
we'll email you.
We're going to send you.
Okay,
there are these great cards for couples that can actually, they're just really great conversation starters. And for the intimacy one, they're just awesome. So any sort of cards like the table tips, but these are more intimate. For those of you that are listening that get locked up, we actually love that. I mean, that's
so fun.
That creates intimacy too.
Totally. I love that. And it brings in playfulness. Like, I'm like, can we please bring playfulness back into sex so much more than, and just for you guys and anyone listening, I love this. If you Google Wants, Wills, Wonts, amazing list for couples. I'm just going to give the caveat. It's very long, so don't be intimidated because you can take it in chunks. It also goes from like very G-rated up to very naughty. Like literally, I was like, I might have to Google some of these words. I'm not sure what these things are. And then you rate your want, you will, and your won'ts, and your partner does, and then you cross compare. And I have found it an incredible communication tool for couples.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Really beautiful. And just like for me, my mind too, it's like on a spreadsheet. It's very logical. I just check the box, and then it leads to like a really sexy conversation, or it can lead to a really sexy conversation.
Yes.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, I think that lighthearted conversation, around the topic just makes it so much more fun, right? Because then shame is not present in the room. There's not fear involved with that.
Yeah.
I mean, Candice and I, we're reading this book on Tantra, and there's this breathing exercise, and you're supposed to do it for a certain amount of time. And
while you're looking at each other.
Yeah, so we're here, we have candles, nice music playing, like the room is warm, like it's perfect, right? Like perfect romance novel situation. And we started laughing so hard, we were literally like
hysterical,
like
rolling on the bed, not in passion, but in laughter.
That is
so funny.
It was awesome. So maybe that's
now, like as you're telling that story, you both just light up and you lean in towards each other, because like, again, adding in laughter. I mean, and I love Tantra practices, but some of them can be really intense, and so then being able to like, honor your boundary and be like, overwhelm, laughter, say, I'm tapping out. This is enough for right now,
Yeah.
you know, and then making connection. though. That's so beautiful. I love it. I love it. You're like rolling on the ground, rolling on the bed and laughing.
Yeah, it was funny. It was fun.
So fun. Okay. Well, so, they're so cute. They just kissed for anyone just listening. And so how can my listeners find you guys, find out more about you all? And I will put anything you share, I will also put in the show notes. But
awesome. The easiest way to find us is namasteadvice.com. So our website is the easiest, quickest way to get a hold of us. We are located in Utah, but we also offer life skills globally for autistic individuals and couples, individual and group life skills support. And then Chris does a lot of his mindfulness meditation sessions online. And so he actually does that with people all over the world too.
Amazing.
So there's this, even though we're located in Utah, for listeners who want to physically come to us, please reach out, go to our website, namasteadvice.com, because we do have resources for you if you're out of state or country.
Amazing. Great. And I will definitely put that in the show notes as well. I highly recommend anyone listening or watching to connect with these two beautiful, very skilled souls. And if you are in Utah, their center is a total sanctuary, a total healing place. So I highly recommend you go check it out. So thanks for sharing time today. And thank you to our listeners. Thank you for being brave and opening your heart to love deep.